tell in this book, but the long story short is I became a critic of this new trend of businesses having to take social stances that had nothing to do with their business. It actually landed at my doorstep in the biotech company I was running. There was demand to sign some sort of industry-wide statement condemning President Trump's policy on immigration. It reached a fever pitch even within my company and like so many other companies across the country after George Floyd's death. I became a greater and greater critic of companies taking these social stands, but I realized that I wasn't actually going to be able to speak my mind as a citizen without that having a negative impact on the company. In fact, it's a longer story, but I wrote a piece in the Wall Street Journal in January of 2021, I want to say, January 2021, when I made a case that big tech companies ought to be bound by the First Amendment if they were taking instructions from the government with technical legal arguments. The 3 advisors to my company stepped down. That was a wake-up call for me to say that, you know what, if I even want to speak freely as a citizen, I can do that. I can speak as a CEO, but filter it through the lens of corporate self-interest. And I was at a stage in my career, and the company was at a good enough place that said, where I was able to make the decision to say, I'm stepping aside. That's what led me to write that first book, World King. Enjoyed that enough that I wrote a second one. So that one came out about a year later. That was Nation of Victims. Traveled the country, done a ton of media. It was a totally different world from biotech. It's a totally different world. Been on cable television more times than I could have been over the last couple of years. But then I started to get weary about just complaining about this problem without doing something to address it. And so that's what led me actually to start about a year ago with a company that was now called Strano, competing with these large financial institutions by telling companies as a shareholder, you gotta knock it off with the politics, focus on your products, focus on your services, get out of these environmental and social agendas that are pushing other people's money, and do it in a way that restores the heart of both capitalism, but actually the part that's even nearer and dearer to my heart is not just the fact that I hope it revives American capitalism, but I hope it's actually a revival of American democracy, because it gets corporate elites and financial institutions out of the business of what voters ought to be deciding in a democratic.
So for somebody that doesn't know, can you break down how ESG was sold, meaning why did some people think this was a good idea, and why do you think it's not a good idea?
So the origin story of the modern version of it starts with the 2008 financial crisis. Okay, what happened in the 08 crisis, actually there's 2 things that happened in 08 that are really interesting in the back of the 2008 financial crisis. One was a mistake made by the Republican Party, which was to bail out the big banks. That was, I remind you, Hank Paulson, an alumnus of Goldman Sachs, used taxpayer money to bail out Goldman Sachs under President Bush. That happened. And what happened in response to that was you had a left-wing backlash. By the way, I think that was crony capitalism all the way down. I was a critic of it at the time, I remain a critic of it today. There was a left-wing backlash that said, you know what, if that's the way you're going to behave, then we, Occupy Wall Street, want to take money from all of those wealthy corporate fat cats and bankers and redistribute it to poor people to help poor people. Agree or not, that was a coherent response, if you ask me. Now, right around that time, a second trend was happening in sort of the socio-political life of our country. Barack Obama was elected as president of the United States. There was the birth of a new strand of the left. So not the Occupy Wall Street left, but a new strand of the left that said, you know what, it's not quite economic injustice or poverty that we care about, not just that. There's the real problem that has to do with racism and misogyny and bigotry and climate change. That's become a big one. I mean, that's the biggest one of all, right? I think wokeism is one religion, climatism is a religion that dwarfs wokeism by comparison. But anyway, this is the sort of the new theory of the case. And what happened was that this was the opportunity to do business in this country for Wall Street. Because if you're Wall Street, Occupy Wall Street, it's a pretty tough pill to swallow. They're medicine. Okay? Right. The new woke stuff is pretty easy. You applaud diversity and inclusion, put some token minorities on your executive ranks or your boards or whatever. Views about the racially disparate impact of climate change. I can fly on that private jet in Malvos. It's good work if you do it. And they didn't do it for free. That's what this whole ESG stakeholder capitalism thing is about. They didn't do that. They do that. That's just you look the other way when it comes to leaving our corporate power intact. And so it's this sort of arranged marriage, actually. My parents are from India, they had an arranged marriage, that was a good kind.
You're like, I know it all too familiar. Yeah.
I mean, there's, I don't like use that term, I mean, the negative sense, they had a good kind of arranged marriage. This is not an arranged marriage of love, okay? This is mutual prostitution. Each side gets something out of the trade, and the net result of that, the bastard child, was the birth of this ESG movement, ESG industrial complex, this apologist model of capitalism that says you have to advance these progressive agendas as a way of atoning for your sin in the 2008 financial crisis, but even more as a way of, if you can't beat them, buy them. And that's effectively the mutual codependent relationship between a progressive movement that used to hate big business, but instead about everything. And together, big banks, woke millennials get in bed, they birth woke capitalism, and they use that to sacrifice Occupy Wall Street, which they put up for cash. So anyway, that's a little bit of the history of this game. Why am I upset about it? Yes, Milton Friedman correctly said that this would make businesses less efficient and they would be less good at making widgets and that shrinks the size of the economic pie, we're all worse off. We all know that old school conservative, classical conservative view of terrorism. I actually agree with most of it, by the way. But that's not what gets me going on this issue, okay? My concern was not that politics would infect capitalism, not just that, but that capitalism would infect democracy. Because what this worldview says is that the way you settle questions like climate change or systemic racism or whatever it might be is not the way we do it here in America, which is through free speech and open in the public square where every person's voice and vote counts equally. That was the bargain we struck in 1776. For better or worse, that's how we do it. That's what we don't do the way they used to do in the old world. Back in aristocratic Europe, where a small group of business elites and labor elites and church elites got together behind closed doors and decided what was right for the rest of society at large. And that's why I sort of try to educate people. This is not a Republican versus Democrat 2022 or 2023 issue. This is a 1776 issue, and it's a question of how you settle disagreements in a society. Is it as citizens with an equal voice through a democratic process, or is it through some type of aristocratic monarchical structure? Will use your money to tell you what kind of society he will create, even if it's one you didn't vote for.
So I was watching this documentary, it's like a 19-minute documentary Bloomberg did, I don't know if you've seen it or not, where they're telling the love story. It's a different story than the one you're talking about. And they're telling a story about Robert Schwartz and Robert Zevin. Just type in Robert Schwartz and Robert Zevin to just do the name. Don't even worry about the documentary, just do Robert Schwartz right there. Let's see what comes up. Underneath, right next to Robert Schwartz right here. So, second name is Zevin, it's that one right there, we got in 2006. That Wikipedia right there, go down, that one right there, yeah, zoom in. Zoom in, so this is, he was a U.S. economist and stockbroker. He was an early advocate of socially responsible investing. He was also actively campaigning for civil rights, against the Vietnam War, use of nuclear weapons. He actively participated in organizations such as American Veterans Committee, Americans for Democratic Action, saying in 1989 he founded Economists Against the Arms Race, now called Economists for Peace and Security. So the story says how these guys originally felt capitalism was a problem, and the right way of doing it is to force businesses to be socially conscious of what they're doing, to give money back. Obviously, they're very left on what they're doing. So the story was that, this is $30 trillion of money being invested back into people, $35 trillion being invested back into the world that we live in. And it sounds very convincing, okay, where a lot of people are falling for it. I remember when we were selling our insurance company, and we were going with folks at Coolant looking, we're sitting with buyers. You know the process, you got to do that. And so we're sitting down, I said, well, so tell us your, so what does your company look like? Well, our biggest challenge we have is we have 1,000 investment bankers that work with us, but 25% are African Americans, 6% are Hispanic. I said, our DI score is this and this, that, and they're asking about the DI score, right? I said, okay, yeah, we're 54% Hispanic, we're 51% women, and, you know, the average agent is 34 years old. You see like their faces, their faces is like, oh, this could, this is, so you guys have a very, so then they start talking, you know, how this could impact their VI score, the look on their face, they were more interested on what this is going to do to the VI score in the marketplace.
That's right.
Than the investment.
Oh, of course, which was completely separate,
Yeah.
it's a different kind of scoring system.
Right.
It's an ESG score going to your credit rating, that affects whether or not you borrow more expensive or not, right? So, a couple things going on here. Okay, so first there was this socially responsible investing move, and you described it perfectly. That exactly was the goal. Use capital as a lever to drive positive social change, or what someone would determine as positive social change. The question they skip is, who gets to decide what is positive or not? These are contested public policy issues, right? That means they're contested because people, human beings, citizens, disagree about it. And we have to decide what's the way we work out our differences. Is it through force, including economic force, or is it through a process of debate in a democratic body politic? I thought we lived in the latter. Old world Europe, actually, in fairness, by the way, I just want to be fair about this. For most of human history, that's not how it's been set. Okay, this is a relatively new idea, it existed in ancient Greece in some sense, but in modern history, this is a relatively new idea. You actually have most questions that were settled through force, either physical force or through other elite intervention. So this American thing we got going on here, this is a departure from history, but that's the experiment that I signed up for, or at least my parents signed up for. I signed up for by being born here. My parents signed up for by coming here. That was the American way. And so, to me, that's the first question is who gets to decide what the right answers are. But the second thing is what's going on with ESG right now is different. That is to say, it goes beyond what was going on with the sustainable, socially responsible investing SRI. So what they were doing was saying, and by the way, another student at Harvard, the endowment at Harvard, you know, some people joke $2 billion. Yeah, some people joke around that Harvard is a giant hedge fund with a college channel to it, right? So what they would do is they would kind of use their capital to divest from Sudan, right? Divest from conflict areas, and they take a lot of credit for issuing nice press releases. That was what socially responsible investing was about, mostly is divestment. Okay, take the bad sectors, pick whatever you think is bad, tobacco, coal, oil, Sudan, cigarette, you know, whatever, gaming, firearms, the big one, divest. And then hopefully if you divest, that will then cause those companies to change their behavior. What ended up really happening was that we had deep, liquid global capital markets. So if those stock prices go down, for example, or asset prices go down, the inherent worth of the activity, the commercial value of it hasn't changed. That just created an opportunity for somebody else to buy it up instead. And so what ends up happening is the guys who want to issue the press releases end up giving up return. The guys who don't care about the press releases would